So what are our sources for this deep dive?
We've got the usual suspects, news sites like Kringvarp Faroe and N.fo,
The go-tos for sure.
but also VP.fo for a bit of that local, how should I put it?
I get you. That insider perspective, right?
Exactly. So ready to dive into Faroe's politics and economy first.
Let's do it.
So Faroe Banki, the main bank there, is making headlines.
Big headlines, yeah. They're about to distribute a whopping 700 million DKK in dividends over the next 3 years.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. And get this, many Faroese people actually own shares in the bank, and the government owns a big chunk too, like 35%.
So it's not just some abstract financial move, it's money going right back to the community.
Exactly. It'll be super interesting to see how this impacts spending and investment locally. Oh, and also on the political front, there's a new member of parliament, Berita Matras Peterson,
Representing?
the Social Democrats.
New voices are always good. And it seems the government is rethinking some tax policies too, right?
Yeah, they're looking at this 10-unit threshold for tax write-offs on apartment buildings.
Okay, so what's the issue with that?
Well, the original idea was to encourage development, but now they're debating if it's still relevant or maybe favors larger developers too much.
It's that balance, right? Trying to encourage growth, but also keeping things fair, especially with housing.
For sure. Should we switch gears to some lighter news now? See what folks are chatting about on VP.fo.
Yeah, let's do it. What's catching your eye?
Well, there's a new cancer survival study showing some positive trends for Faroese patients.
That's great to hear. Where can people find that data if they're interested?
It's on the NordCan website. And speaking of good news, it looks like all the school kids in the Faroe Islands are getting a chance to send out Christmas cards.
Ah, that's a lovely tradition.
It is very heartwarming. But then on a more serious note, there's also a lot of talk about the vulnerability of those undersea cables.
Ah, because of all the suspected sabotage happening globally.
Exactly. It's making people in the Faroe Islands, think about their own reliance on those connections.
Yeah, makes you realize how interconnected everything is, even in a place like the Faroes.
That's for sure. Oh, and this is fun. VP.fo has this article arguing that gas station hot dogs are actually like the ultimate Faroes food.
What, really?
Yeah, the author's saying it's not just about the hot dog itself, but the whole social thing, like those spontaneous gatherings at gas stations.
So it's like a little bite of community. I like it.
Me too. Now, for Sports.looks, the women's national handball team is getting ready for the European Championships.
Awesome. Who are they
Oh.
playing against?
Their first match is against Switzerland. There's even a free warm-up event at the Key Hall for anyone who wants to cheer them on.
Love it. Okay, and for our final stop on this little tour of the Faroe Islands,
The weather.
of course, what's brewing in those North Atlantic skies?
Low-pressure systems are in charge right now, so expect strong winds, especially Sunday night.
Typical Faroe Islands weather then, eh?
Pretty much. But there's a twist this time, actually.
Oh, what's that?
The winds are expected to be easterly and northeasterly, which is a bit unusual for the region.
Interesting. So even the weather is keeping things interesting in the Faroes.
Always. Shall we dig a little deeper into some of these stories?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else you found in those local news sources.
Speaking of those undersea cables, .vp.fo had this really interesting article about, well, how vulnerable they are. And it got me thinking about what could happen in the Faroes if, something were to happen to them.
Yeah, especially with all the talk about sabotage lately. That's got to be a concern for the islands. What kind of impacts are they worried about?
Well, they talked about how communication networks could be disrupted, like everything. Financial transactions, even emergency services.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You just assume everything's going to work all the time.
Yeah, totally. And it's sparking conversations in the Faroes about stepping up security measures. Makes sense, right?
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that no matter how remote or idyllic a place seems, those global issues still matter.
Right. Speaking of global trends, remember that tax policy we were talking about, the one for apartment buildings? It's actually pretty complex.
Fill me in. What makes it so complicated?
Well, the whole point of that 10-unit threshold was to encourage people to build more rental properties, to help with potential housing shortages.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I'm guessing it's not that simple.
Nope. Now, there's concern that it might actually discourage smaller developers or even, push up housing costs in the long run.
So it's that classic problem, trying to boost the economy without making things harder for everyday people.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see what the government does about it. But on a brighter note, remember that story about the kids sending Christmas cards?
Yeah, that's sweet.
Well, it turns out it's not just about holiday cheer, it's also part of a bigger effort to support traditional postal services.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize there was more to it.
Yeah. There's this whole movement in the Faroes and in other places too to keep those old school ways of communicating alive, even with all the digital stuff we have now.
I get it. It's like there's something special about actually writing a letter or sending a card.
For sure. And I thought it was kind of cool how it connects back to what we were saying about the undersea cables. Like maybe it's a way of reminding ourselves that we don't always have to rely on technology for everything.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's like celebrating community and tradition at the same time.
Totally. Oh, and remember those gas station hot dogs?
The ones that are like a national treasure.
Pretty much. Well, there's even more to that story than we thought. It's not just about grabbing a quick snack, it's like a whole social thing.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What's so special about these hot dogs?
Well, the article on VP.fo was saying that they've become a symbol of how practical Faroes people are and how much they value the simple things.
I like that.
Right. It's about those unplanned moments when you bump into someone at the gas station, grab a hot dog, and just chat.
So simple, but so meaningful.
Exactly. It reminds us that food isn't just fuel. It's about connecting with others and enjoying life's little moments.
Okay, so we've got anxieties about global issues, economic debates, heartwarming traditions, and super meaningful hot dogs. Anything else happening in the Faroe Islands today?
We've talked about the economy and global stuff affecting the Faroe Islands, but what about the cultural side of things? Art, literature.
Oh, yeah. Always love to hear what creative folks are up to in the Faroes. What have you found?
Well, there's this really cool exhibition by an artist named John Magnus Johnson. It's opening at Smíðuni í Litluvik in Hav.
I've heard of him. Isn't he known for those amazing landscape paintings?
Yeah. He's got this way of capturing the Faroes landscape that's just like breathtaking. The raw beauty, the power of nature.
I can almost picture those stormy seas and cliffs right now.
Right. And if you're more into literature, the new volume of Wenzel just came out.
It's,
It's a Faroes literary journal. They publish all kinds of stuff: poetry, short stories, essays, translations. It's like a glimpse into the heart of Faroes culture.
that sounds amazing. I'll have to
So,
check it out. Oh, and speaking of getting the glimpse into Faroes culture,
yeah.
there's this photography exhibit at the National Gallery that caught my eye. It's called Faces of the Faroes.
I saw that. It looks fascinating. It's all portraits, right? Exploring the diversity of the people who live there.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even in a place with such strong traditions, there are so many different stories and perspectives.
Totally. The photographer, they featured all sorts of folks, from fishermen and farmers to artists and, entrepreneurs. Really captures the variety of life in the Faroes today.
Love it. Okay, so we've covered art, literature, the people, but we can't wrap up without checking in on those Faroes wins, right?
Of course not. It wouldn't be a true deep dive into the Faroes without it. Those strong easterly and northeasterly winds we were talking about earlier, well, they're going to be sticking around, especially on Sunday night. Anyone in those exposed areas better bundle up.
I bet those dramatic landscapes look even more stunning when the wind is whipping around.
Oh, for sure. It's part of the magic.
Well, that about wraps up our quick trip to the Faroe Islands today. It's amazing how much we learned in just a short time. Everything from the latest financial news and political discussions to art exhibitions and those gas station hot dogs.
It's true, and it shows how complex and vibrant life in the Faroes is. You've got global forces interacting with local traditions, people looking ahead to the future while also cherishing the present moment. And of course, there's that incredible natural beauty that just draws you in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm already eager to learn more, to dive deeper into those stories we just touched on today.
That's the power of these deep dives, right? They spark our curiosity and remind us that there's always something new to discover, even in a world that can feel so familiar.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this whirlwind tour of the Faroe Islands. Until next time, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and we'll be back with another deep dive into, well, who knows where we'll go next.
The possibilities are endless. See you next time.